This video is sponsored by NDAC. They are beyond technical. Right now there's an offer on if you go to NDAC.90.com and use the BiG Scuba code BiG Scuba 2024. And we're now going to be meeting Christopher Griffiths.
He is the director of Deep Labs, so covers both sites.
Yeah, he's stationed on the campus and managing the development of the site. And he is going to be talking to us all about the future developments.
Yeah, and a little overview of the campus site.
Yeah.
And just from my perspective, I'm Chris Griffiths. I'm the director of Deep Labs. Deep Labs is our it's a portfolio of estates. This being one of them, Portside being the other, and anything else that we decide in the future that we're going to sort of embark on in terms of facility. Firstly, welcome to Deep. It's actually great. It's a great opportunity to have you guys here and sort of, one, show you a little bit of our vision, but secondly, we'll take a little bit of a walk down to the water, head down the Hacker Staircase, and get onto the islands that we've built down there. In terms of the facility, we acquired this quarry probably 2 years ago. It was one of our very, very early acquisitions. And one of the things we did, it wasn't just, oh, this looks like a good one, we'll take it. We did actually do some research around the globe to try and find something where we could carry out testing, we could carry out training, diving, etc. And what was good about this place was it's a pretty benign body of water. You know, in terms of sea state, if you think of testing, the number of days that would be lost to bad weather, we don't really have that as a problem here. So Deep Campus will become the home of both Deep as an organisation, but also Deep Institute, which is our training human performance capability. So we've embarked on two sets of planning. We've got some temporary planning, and you're sitting in some of this at the moment. And the other parts of temporary planning, we've got some single bed accommodation that sort of sits out there on the real southern point of the facility. And we've also built a set of stairs that take us from the southern pad down onto the water. And those have really been our temporary type asks of the Forest of Dean County Council. Longer term, bit of history of the site. Used to be a limestone quarry. I think what I've seen is it's sort of around the very early 90s that they ceased quarrying here. I believe the stone that they used was taken in, and they used that to build the bridge. Previous owner ran it as a dive school, which no doubt everyone is aware of. And like I said, we purchased this 2 years ago. So it's 50 acres. The actual body of water is somewhere between 600 and 650 meters long, over 100 meters wide. In terms of getting a bit of perspective, southern pad, northern pad, west and east in terms of compass. Shallow end being on the northern side, deep end down on the southern side, depth ranging to about 80 meters. And when I say a range, and the reasons for that is the water levels rises and falls about 6 meters a year. So it's got a significant change over a year. Understand that it's fed from an aquifer underneath, so it's not rainwater or anything that fills it up. It's ground fed. So, putting the planning, the temporary planning to one side, if we look at what we think campus will be over the next decade. We have asked for planning for a number of different buildings, and we'll start on top side first. So looking at the eastern side here, we're going to build 2 warehouses. That's going to be Deep's back office, if you like. Sort of building A here, we would look to probably around 2,000 square meters of usable space, 1,000 square meter footprint. First floor, we will use that probably for office space as we plan to build out the wider campus. And the bottom floor we would then use to use a bit of a workshop. But we start, we begin to migrate our people from Portside here. So we've got everybody here. That includes our engineering teams as well. Second building, we would look to use that for things like maintenance, storage. We've got a couple of submarines, which you will have seen. The other building, most of the time, they are where they should be, on the water. And we've actually started to get that spun up now. We've had some of our people running through some trips out to get a bit of a feel, particularly our engineers that are sort of working on the submarine project or submersible project. So you obviously came up the A48. The plan will be to put 2 buildings at the entrance, and that'll be sort of our visitor centre, reception, have some of our real estate folks based at the entrance. You'd come in, you'd swing through to the left, and on this real southern end, where we've currently got the accommodation, the temporary accommodation, that would become a car park. So we'd be looking to 100 and potentially 150 car parking spaces. All of this will eventually disappear. This southern pad here becomes very much an open area. And long term, we would want to put a warehouse, or we've certainly got a plan to put a warehouse down there. Where that will be sited exactly, that could vary, and the size of it could as well, potentially become smaller. What we've found is this southwestern corner here is brilliant for putting cranes. So we have mobile cranes in. We use them to launch our submarines, or to at least get them down onto sub-island. We've launched all of our pontoons from up here, so it's an ideal operational area for us. Along this eastern ridge, we've also got plans to put some accommodation. If you remember, previous owner had done exactly the same thing. So what we'd look to do is put potentially half a dozen, 2 or 3 bedroom type accommodation. The idea of that is, 1, if we have guests, 2, if we've got sort of staff here for 28 days, it's an ideal place for them to bring their families down to over a weekend, to sort of spend a bit of time with them. As we swing around now onto this western side, there's a haul road that runs from the southern pad and takes you down to what we have now built a little bit of a temporary quayside using the pontoons, these 40-ton pontoons that we've purchased. So that'll become temporary. Longer term, the idea is we grade that road, we surface it, we run utilities down it, and we have a permanent quayside from which to operate. So that's sort of our longer term vision. If you then sort of come up the high road and on this western edge, this is where we would build the majority of our single occupancy accommodation. Anything up to 60 small 1-bedroom places, self-contained. And the idea there is, if we have a group of people come to do a training week or 2 weeks, that is where they would reside. They'd have somewhere to store their kit, dry their kit, showers, communal areas, and that's what we would see in what we're calling Camps Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. Coming further up to the northern edge, on this northwestern side, we would put our main our main operational building, and that's going to be classrooms. It's going to be auditoriums, training rooms, etc., canteen. So I would see a significant number of deep folks there, but I would also see our partners, guests, etc., spend time up there with us. The second roof you see here will be for our recreational building. And that, if you think about the human performance that we're talking about, unfortunately our human performance director's not around at the moment, but he's got many years of sort of training high performance teams in the military, sort of Marines, etc. So that would have a pool, it would have a gym, yoga studio, etc. And that's where we'd work on people's performance. And then we've got a second potential here to actually put another building, whether that could just be an ops room. You've got great visibility down from here across all of the water. When we embarked on this probably November time last year. We ran a number of consultations. One with our neighbours. We've got quite a few neighbours on this northern edge, and secondly with the council, both Forest of Dean County Council and Gloucestershire County Council. So we've brought them along this entire journey, and so far I think it's fair to say they're supportive of it. We've got all the relevant consultants lined up in terms of ecology, highways, power, water, and these guys are sort of on team now, because I would expect us to see questions, sort of come back as with any planning. There was talk about this being turned into landfill. You imagine the heavy vehicles, if it had been turned into and you imagine the ecological impact as well. We're very sensitive to the ecological aspect of it. We're sensitive to highways, and people live here. So it's really important we sort of fit into that. And in terms of planning for our buildings as well, we've been very, very sympathetic in terms of we're in the Forest of Dean. There's a lot of farms around here. So when you start looking at shapes and sizes of buildings, you actually start to take that into account, thinking about what it looks like around the rest of it. And I think the other piece then is tying it in with the sort of the current fauna and flora out there. Our whole existence is what can we do for the oceans, the environment. So, we're not looking to do everything for the oceans and, do something completely different on land. So we have been sympathetic as we've moved through this. And ecologically, we know we've got quite a diverse sort of set of animals here. Longer term, and I would see this happening over decades, if you think about all the tree lines, you think of the bushes, etc. here, what we would look to do is to strip out the non-native and replant with native to Forest of Dean. So, it brings it back to what it was, because if you think about the buddleia and that's growing out there, it's just an invasive species. So that kind of covers the sort of top side, if you like. When we go onto the water, and you'll get a good idea of this when we go down. We've deployed 40 ton concrete pontoons. So we've used those pontoons to build out things like sub-island, things like a dive island, a quayside. So we're in the process of kind of configuring those at the moment, and we're going to have a little quayside down here. In this area over here, we've got a gantry crane that is actually being built at the moment, and that'll give us a 3-ton lift capability, and that 3 tons will allow us to take quads up and down, take people's diving kit up and down, save you sort of lugging it up and down the hacky staircase at the moment. Yes, they are. And you have the ability to raft them as well. The interesting thing is they use these particular pontoons, these concrete pontoons. They're 20 metres long and 3 metres wide. They use them in the ocean. So putting them on a body of water like that, when you step onto them, it's no different to sort of standing where you are now. They are rock solid. So we're using these to sort of build out capability on the water. And in June of this year, we'll see our first delivery of walk-to-work pontoons. So we will link these concrete pontoons up with sort of a pontoon that's 2 meters wide and 10 meters long, aluminium pontoons. And so we'll be able to sort of build walkways between all of the facilities we have down there. The last thing I want to mention is the rocks. It's a quarry, so one of the important things for us is how do we keep it safe? So there are certain areas we've netted because as human beings, we're very close to those surfaces. There are areas on the water, and you'll see this very, very clearly when you go down. We've got a 10-meter exclusion zone, and we've run buoys down the eastern and western sides of it. We worked with a geology company, and they ran some calculations that should a rock fall, what is the trajectory of that? Where does it land? And they figured out the furthest they would bounce out is 5 meters from the rock face, and therefore we sort of doubled that and said, right, we'll put a safety factor in there. So we've got 10 meters down, east, west, and it's going in around the northern edge as well. Up on the south, because we are so close to the rock face, that's all been netted. So when rocks do come down, they sort of sit behind a net.
What happened to are they all still there, or like the plane fuselage and
The answer to that is yes.
Oh, yeah.
So what we had to do was you've obviously dived.
Yes.
This, so the whole road runs all the way around, right? Yeah. What we did was we lifted all of them and put them on the haul road underwater. So they are there. There were a few items that didn't belong to us, and they were. We haven't seen those yet. We'll be dragging those out. So a lot, the majority of those attractions. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for Gemma. Those attractions are still kicking around down there.
So they're just staying there because it's too much to bring them out.
Well, I'm not sure whether you'd want to bring them out. There could be some value around them.
Potential usage.
Yeah.
Basically for our dive team to train on at any level, from basically once we've got a Sentinel in there, they could be used as simulated research sites from a Sentinel excursion, but equally with our commercial team, they could be used for commercial training. So to take something like the original diving bell, which is a big object, do a controlled, safe moving of it as a training exercise. So the main artefacts are all of great value to us.
Yeah.
So I think that sort of covers our top side.
Thanks, Chris, for giving us that talk, and it's good to hear, the future plans, and
really.
Also really good to hear about, the landscape, and as well, that this is going to be, all part and parcel.
Caring for the environment.
Yeah, exactly, and especially for local residents as well. It's good to know that, this site is going to be protected, and nature is all going to be encouraged.
They're all going to be at one together.
Yeah, it's not going to be some blot on the landscape here. It's going to be something really nice, and for the local environment to be proud of.
Yes, yeah, and they're putting back, getting rid of invasive species.
I can't believe, that was going to be, one of the options. If Deep hadn't got involved,
Absolutely.
one of the options could have been
landfill.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
That'd been horrendous.
Yeah, so it's probably a bit of an eye opener for listeners.
That was a bit of a surprise.
Yeah. So after Chris spoke to us, we went down onto the waterside, down the steps, and went down onto these concrete pontoons.
Which didn't move at all.
It was super solid, yeah. And they had there's a cover over there where the subs will sit.
I was jumping up and down to see if that could get the pontoons to
No
tip.
movement.
No, I can confirm definitely no movement there.
And we had perfect weather. It was lovely and still. The
That
water was glassy.
It was like a mirror.
Yeah, so that was really good just to get a feel for how it's going to develop.
They've got building on there, haven't they? It's like If you can imagine,
There were shipping containers type
shipping
of things.
containers, but also had like a garage sort of
Roofed area.
plastic roofed garage area with winches and all sorts
Yeah.
of stuff, so they can work on subs. When they get them on shore.
Yeah, and really interesting being down on the water, looking up at the quarry cliff sides that had been netted. So we saw that, and then we went back up the steps and had another sort of debrief, got rid of our PPE and safety shoes.
Got rid of that, didn't we?
And then travelled back over to the deep port side again.
Yeah, back in Bristol. So did that, and it was all good.